So I'm associate professor at Brunel, and as I said, that's what I do. The other thing I've noticed, there's a strong anthropological dimension to this. A lot of it is about data and data and data, but we've got to also think about people. So the anthropologists understand this quite well. The Indian culture or the Indian fable, what does sustainability, what does circularity feel like? Well, this is the blind men touching an elephant, and each will come back with their own paradigm of what it's like. And of course, paradigm is the ancient Greek word for model. So your model is determined by a number of things. It's ethnicity, it's education, it's how you approach things, and your context. And this is the problem for designing products, service systems, etc., and the problem for circularity. And at a city level, complexity theory also tells us that some systems are so complex they become inherently unknowable. So then, how reliable is data? But I'm already going off piece. I thought I'd show you this, actually. I stopped using the picture of me a long time ago. I stopped you talking about this, but I presented a Channel 4 programme a number of years ago where people lived on a landfill site. Within the distance of Bedzed, you could see Bedzed in the distance. And the provocation is people think we throw things away. We know the planet's a closed system. You don't throw it away. 80% statistically of the population live within 2 kilometres of a landfill site. But so what we did, we put people up for an eco-challenge. We said, you're going to live off other people's waste for 3 weeks. They stayed in Gatwick Airport the night before. They all thought they were flying somewhere exotic, and then we dumped them on landfill and said, you're going to live off other people's waste. It's really insightful on the profligate use of our natural resources and that system of production and consumption that's not sustainable. Everything from coffins to construction waste, of course, and also sex toys came back. It's a complete mix of products. You can do some quite interesting things, by the way. If you're bored and you've got an old bath, or a skip if you feel like really going for it, get a radiator, light a fire, and thermal cycle it. Heats up really well, so you can get a repurposed bath into a hot tub. Probably wouldn't get a degree from it, but it's a good project. The other thing, we are still the fastest growing waste stream in Europe. I was involved, led the project for the Wee Man sculpture, the installation by Tower Bridge. This is the amount of electronic waste you would discard in one lifetime. Still roughly, we're still poor at this, still about 7% reuse. It's still extremely low. And what we did with RAP and Know-How, we went out and I actually went into people's homes and we actually did a collection service to test what we could actually get back. And you'll see Know-How, which is one of the biggest electrical retailers in Europe, have just launched a take-back scheme across the UK. So things are getting better. I could talk about this a lot, actually, but I won't. The other thing is the ecological footprint. So one of the things, if you look at the most sophisticated piece of ubiquitous equipment we've ever owned, smartphone, PCs, laptops, etc., we each have, on the planet, if you divide the Earth's productive land by our population, we each have 1.8 global hectares to provide for our materials and absorb emissions. It fluctuates a bit, but that's what we have, 2 football pitches. So if you look here, probably about 566 phones, 24p's would take up your 1 fair Earth share. Then look at everything else you own, from washing machines to holidays to commuting here, all the other issues. You realise when people say we're going to be sustainable, we're 21% beyond the Earth's carrying capacity or thereabouts now. So let's get this in real context. I need a bit of therapy, don't I, Duncan? Anyway, if you go onto weman.org, you'll see that. But actually, if you look at the ecological footprint of London, it's about 49 million global hectares, which is the unit of measurement, 293 times its actual geographical space. If you look at the actual amount of land we're using, we're actually currently absorbing emissions and providing materials for roughly 27 million people for a population of 9. Roughly 3 times. So it has to be system level change, and there's some great work gone on, but let's be a bit more pragmatic about the claims we make. So I think we need to engage people more. If you went to the area around here and said, have you heard about the circular economy, most people wouldn't have a clue. So one of the things after the Wee Man I tried to do, at the time the government was saying, act on CO2. If everyone lives like you, we need 3 planets in order to survive. Well, people can't relate to that. So we did a project taking a medical phenomenon, which is the homunculus, and you go online, you start off with the endogenous humanoid form, feet are transport, hands home energy, belly is food, bum recycling, mouth water, head domestic appliances and consumer electronics. You answer a number of questions about your lifestyle, and you get prioritised tips. And it becomes a visual mnemonic to guide people and give them priorities. I think in the first month we had about 10,000 people who had completed their carbon footprint because we made it really simple. And then we produced these, and there's Caroline Lucas and Colin gave David Attenborough that's his habit, by the way. I'll tell you more about those in more details. But it became like this is me, this is my impact, this is my personal contribution to some serious issues, here are some prioritised actions, and what do I do about it? So the other key thing is we work internationally in Hong Kong, Thailand, etc. And lot needs to be thought about mitigation as well, beyond mitigation to adaptation. So This is a factory in Thailand, once in 70-year flooding, massive issue. We had a quarter loss because of this flooding, but there was an upside to it. If you found an alligator swimming around your house, I think you got 20 baht, which I think is about £2. So there's always an upside to these things. But actually, adaptation is having a massive issue. Most of our clients have got nothing to do with sustainability. They're engineers or risk directors, etc. I don't think we work with one sustainability director at the moment at all on all the issues that we work in. And then we have they actually have names for things. The lexicon of describing pollution is quite weird. Nuclear winter. The head of the Chinese military, or Navy actually said, this isn't so bad because it will stop the Americans sending their laser-guided bombs into Beijing, because apparently the bombs won't work when it's as polluted as this. Can you not see the irony and the stupidity of these comments? So anyway, back to a bit of construction. We've been working, we use life cycle assessment a lot, and EPDs, etc. Now, I was talking to Michael about this, Michael Braungart, and of course he says it's stupid calling something life cycle assessment when a Coke bottle doesn't have a life. And so we're now discussing how we might rephrase this. But Cleveland Steel and Tubes is a company. They obviously produce prime steel, but also recycled tubes from the steel, from the oil, gas, and water industry, and old turbines. They've got a stand over there. Excellent company. They put about 2,500 tons of surplus steel into the stadium. About 65% of the steel in the stadium has been reused from Cleveland Steel. But they had trouble with the BIM standards and then convincing people that this has got the structural integrity. And of course it does. So we did a life cycle assessment. You can read some of the stuff on their website in Cleveland Steel and Tubes. It's also in the Wimbledon #1 court as well. And of course, basically, to cut a long story short, because of the time, about 96% reduction. Even once you've removed the bitumen, the concrete, the polyethylene, once you've done all the processing, once you've flamed it, done all this stuff, it's still lower than actually producing prime rolled steel alone. So the data becomes a mnemonic for the company then to promote their services and the quality of what they do on that basis. And of course, then they can talk about it. And there's a video as well with the Daily Telegraph if you want to read it. But it's about giving secure data to someone where the BIM spec might say, well, it doesn't quite fit, but actually the data's there to prove that it will work, it does work, and it's in operation. Another one we did recently, which I think is an excellent one, just to find an example, is Cup Club. They won the Ellen MacArthur Award for plastics, and they went to one of my clients, Compass Group, who we work with HSBC, and they said, it's better for the environment. It's really good. They went, prove it. That's why, it's reusable. Yeah, we'll prove it, because it's reusable cups, it's got to be washed. To cut a long story short, we modelled it, including the washing detergents that's used, the backhauling, all the packaging, etc. It's significantly better because the recycling rates currently are 1 to 5% for coffee cups. In order for this to be worse, the recycling rates would have to be up at 83% before this rotable cup becomes worse than a disposable cup. So in other words, significantly better. And there's a full LCA done to ISO standards on this as well. And then two final slides. I think we need desirable visions of a better future. We've seen a lot of that. I've listened to Nick this morning from Brighton. I live in Brighton. I didn't even know that all that work was going on literally where I live, so it's been very insightful. But we also need some system-level thinking, stuff that's pretty impressive. Now, have a look at Buckminster Fuller's work from the 1960s, a geodesic dome over Manhattan. He actually thought this was a good thing because it'd be lower energy use and it'd be a controlled environment. I'm not going to send this to Trump because he might actually like this idea and decide to do something bad with it. But anyway, just another provocation on this. I heard someone talking about tensegrity the other day. Oh, tensegrity and additive manufacturing. Arup stuff is brilliant. Buckminster Fuller, one of Dyson's hero, he's the originator of tensegrity, tensile strength and integrity. So he's the originator of this. So I do think some people, when they're talking about architecture, not you, Duncan, obviously, but they need to go back and look at some of the antecedents of where these ideas originally came from. And then finally, my first job was in the Netherlands for a company called Philips. I was designing a hi-fi, and we used to have green flagships. This is the best you can do within any one product category area. It doesn't have to be all green. This isn't a Philips product, by the way, but this is my mnemonic to guide my design thinking. It's a beer bottle. So it's the Wobo bottle from Alfred Heineken. Being from the Netherlands, he was in the Dutch Antilles, having a nice holiday, walks along the beach, sees the locals drinking his beer, discarding the bottles, and also not having homes to go to. So having that sort of philanthropy they have in the Netherlands, goes back and sets in train the eco-redesign of a beer bottle. So not only does it have the functionality of protection and containment for beer, but at the end of life, you change the context of use and you give it value. And it has the properties of a brick. So these houses were actually built. And I think a couple still survive, I think. And also what I like about it is the more you drink, the bigger the house you get. So it's a win-win. Anyway, thank you very much for your time.